What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Padway. I'm a former history teacher turned tech integration specialist. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about my Hyperdoc journey. Now, I need to preface all this with this first iteration of this lesson I'm going to talk about. I was a second-year teacher. I had just been bumped from the middle school into the high school. I was teaching a new content, and I get to the page in my textbook about the Spanish-American War. So I decided I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something cool about the Spanish-American War. So I spent all this time, I did some cool research, and I found what I thought were the coolest primary source documents. And so I said, this is perfect. I got all these great primary sources. What I'm going to have is I'm going to have the kids look through them. I'm going to have them answer some questions. And then when they're done, I'm going to have them make a cartoon that represents what they've discovered. Unfortunately, as you probably are thinking right now, that fell a little flat. The apply was cool and what kids created at the end was all right, but the process in getting there was not a good one. In fact, it was 2 days of slugging through these questions that really were just kind of DOK level 1. They're pretty surface level and artificial about the sources themselves. So one of the things that happens is, as teachers, we always are iterating. We're always changing the way we do things. What is hard for new teachers, which is why we really do need to support our new teachers, is that if you've never taught it before and you don't teach it again until next year, it's very hard to make those changes, especially as you might be learning a new content and teaching a new class. So year 2 rolls around and I had an opportunity to participate in lesson study. And it just turned out, it kind of lined up with this syncing of the main lesson. And so we iterated it, and we used the 2 primary sources that we thought were really important, was the New York World article and the New York Journal article. And we kind of slowly released these to students. We did multiple rounds, and we tried to create a better experience than just simply a list of questions by prompting students as we went through, giving them a portion of the article to create some meaning. What did you think about this? Okay, now here's a little bit more. Now what's changed in your thinking? And that worked, but again, it just fell a little flat in student engagement. Here I am going, why aren't the students so in love with these cool articles? These are the coolest primary sources. They're over 100 years old. And it just fell flat. So iteration 3 turns into my Hyperdoc lesson. And the first thing I had to do when creating this Hyperdoc is I really had to think about what I'm trying to teach. And what had occurred to me was what I really wanted students to know was I wanted students to know the role the media plays in shaping public opinion, and then how yellow journalism played a role in 1898 as the Spanish-American War started. Those kind of 2 pieces. So starting with that is my objective for you at the end of this. As I'm trying to put it into that explore, explain, apply cycle of learning. So I guess my primary sources were always kind of a big explorer, but it was really not a very good explorer. I decided, okay, these are the 2 articles that I want people to know about, but instead of reading both, what you're going to do is you're going to partner up. You're going to read one, your partner is going to read one, and then you're going to have a conversation with your partner. Again, trying to build in these 4 C's: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And that communication, that collaboration, they start realizing that what one person thinks and the other person thinks are vastly different depending on the articles that you've read. So then we start diving into some of those differences and we get into the explain. Now for the explain, I have notes that I could give you and we could talk about the Spanish-American War, but you know what? I've got 2 video clips, a student project and one from Mr. Bett's class, and they're a little bit more engaging, a little bit more exciting. You get your choice and you can pick which explain you want. What you'll hear in that explain is you'll understand that people are trying to sell papers, and so they're trying to make those really juicy articles. Kind of like what we would consider today fake news and those really clickbait type headlines to get people to buy papers, right? If you're in the paper business, you need to sell papers. After they've done that, then they got back to that same apply. That apply was also to create a cartoon or a different visual representation of what was going on at that time period based off of the articles that you've read. Now, as this evolved, what I noticed is students were much more engaged. They only had to do 1 article apiece, but they had some conversations, and in those conversations, they started realizing that what one paper said and the other paper said were vastly different. So, as this lesson evolves, I started building in some other pieces to it beyond just the explore, the explain, apply. We started with an engage and a political cartoon that we just kind of started having some discussions about yellow journalism, a little bit more history about the papers themselves that we were looking at. And then when I get to the end, for those students who'd finished their apply already, I added some extends in. And when I look at those extends, we start asking about current events and how they're related to media and public opinion or the role of yellow journalism. And so looking at the musical Newsies that had just come through San Francisco was an opportunity for students to connect the newsboy strike with yellow journalism, and again, the role of these papers in trying to make a profit. Then you think about the tabloids that you see at the grocery store and like how those are related to yellow journalism. You know, Brangelina just had a green alien as a baby, and whoa, what is that? Well, it's not very far off from what we were talking about in our lesson. The last thing I put on there is, thinking about other current events in Guantanamo Bay. How do we have a prison in Cuba, a country that we don't really have diplomatic relationships with, and why? Well, that all stems back to 1898, the sinking of Maine, and yellow journalism, and giving students an opportunity to kind of continue their exploration and make connections with the past and the present. What I found by doing this was the engagement level increased dramatically. And I started building in some other pieces for students. If I wanted to keep everyone together at certain parts, we added in some the street view of the USS Maine Memorial from Arlington, so students can kind of start exploring a little bit more, again, making current connections with the past. This is my Hyperdoc story. I'm sure you've got your own, or you're here to make your own. It's really about making learning opportunities active for students, engaging for students, so they can communicate, they can collaborate, they can critically think together, and they can create something that is truly special.